Be ready. Change can happen in an instant. Check on the BBC Weather app.
The BBC World Service is a powerhouse. It's the world's radio station. How cool is that?
There were many occasions like the landing on the moon, which I learned about through the BBC World Service.
The BBC has provided joy, hope, and grace all over the world, which is really rare, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
It's no exaggeration to say the BBC World Service has become the international watchword for quality broadcasting.
The BBC World Service. Listen on Sounds.
A new era for Disney, so says boss Bob Iger, as the firm's streaming division finally turns a profit 6 months earlier than it promised Wall Street. Pressure in the pipeline, BP profits slumped by more than expected, raising further questions about the oil giant's strategy. Plus, back on the radar for US regulators, Boeing faces a new safety investigation, this time over the 787 Dreamliner. Hello, welcome. This is Business Today. I'm Ben Thompson, and we're going to start with news from Disney, because we have turned a corner. That's according to the boss of Disney, a message to investors from Bob Iger as the entertainment giant raises its profit forecast for the year. It's revealed that its film and TV streaming business has turned a profit for the first time. Well, Disney launched its Disney Plus service back in 2019 to compete with Netflix and adapt to the changing way that we get our entertainment. But it has been losing money since then. Disney promised Wall Street that those losses would turn to profits by September. But take a look at this. Disney's entertainment streaming division made a profit of $47 million. Now that's between January and March, compared to a loss of $587 million this time last year. So out of the red 6 months ahead of schedule. Michelle Fleury is in New York taking a closer look at all of this for us. And Michelle, give us a sense of what Disney have told us. It's quite a turnaround in delivering that profit much earlier than expected.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge surprise. I think Disney has been trying to adapt as people ditch cable TV and switch to streaming services. They promised Wall Street that its streaming business would become profitable by September. And here we are, ahead of schedules, because since Disney Plus launched, remember, in 2019 to compete with Netflix, it had been losing money. Now, for the first time, Disney Plus and Hulu have actually turned a profit. And what executives are saying is that its full streaming portfolio, including ESPN Plus, is on track to become profitable later this year. So you'd think all of that would be great news. And yet, if you look at the share price, it's down just shy of 10%. And this is the thing that got investors. Disney gave a more cautious outlook, Ben, on subscriber growth. They warned that streaming revenue would be a little bit softer next quarter due to additional expenses for things like cricket rights in India. And so that put the company sort of with this good news, but having to play defense a bit. And we saw the company's chief executive, Bob Iger, tell analysts that we've said all along our path to profitability will not be linear. And so they're trying to celebrate this great news. And I think it's worth remembering it is a pretty important milestone, a kind of a view echoed by Hannah Walsh, who's from Ampere Analysts in London.
I think it's a great news for Disney. It's something they've been looking to achieve for quite some time now. And yeah, I think it does really show a great sign for Disney's entertainment streaming platform. It is worth noting, though, that when you combine the entertainment streaming services with its sports streaming services, the streaming business of Disney did still see a loss in this quarter. The parks business has seen a great growth domestically, but also internationally with the Hong Kong park as well. They did indicate that there's going to be some slowdown, but also they said there was going to be some slowdown in terms of subscriber growth for Disney Plus in Disney's third quarter of the year, as that growth starts to slow. That's really the side of the business that investors are keeping an eye on at the moment, and that's probably largely the reason why we saw that kind of more declining rate.
And of course, all of this comes off the backdrop of that very bitter proxy fight where the leadership of CEO Bob Iger was essentially being challenged, and there was a whole question about why they weren't as profitable as Netflix. I think this will sort of answer some of those questions, but clearly Wall Street at the moment, not much fan, it seems, of shows like The Bear and Shogun, which have been huge hits for Disney.
Michelle, as always, good to talk to you. Thank you. Michelle Fleury there live in New York. Now, elsewhere, the oil giant BP has reported a slump in profits for the first 3 months of the year. It made $2.7 billion between January and March. Now, that's down 40% on the same period last year. The results will put more pressure on BP's new boss, who took over just in January. Well, part of the slump can be put down to lower oil prices. But as our business editor Simon Jack explains, arch UK rival Shell is doing much better than BP, and it raises some big questions for shareholders about the company's strategy.
We are coming out of the back end of the energy crisis that was sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which saw Russian oil and gas supplies either shut off or shunned by many markets, which sent prices rocketing. So we're coming down from there. So I think it's very unlikely that the likes of BP will ever make as much money as they did during that 2022-2023 period. But what is interesting about the BP numbers, down 45% on lower oil and gas profits, they slightly missed the estimates that people said of what they were expecting them to make in profits, whereas Shell, similar company profile, actually exceeded their estimates. And this is down to the fact that Shell has been unapologetically going hell for leather for more oil and gas production. And BP has been less aggressive in that way, saying it's trying to stick to its transition plans. Both have weakened them a little bit, but there is some tension between BP and Shell shareholders, saying some of them would like the BP strategy to be a bit more like Shell. So we'll see where that goes.
Business editor Simon Jack there. Now to new safety questions that are facing the aircraft giant Boeing. Regulators in America have opened another investigation into the firm after it acknowledged that it may not have carried out proper quality inspections on its 787 Dreamliner aircraft. Well, that comes on top of a probe that was launched earlier this year into the safety of its 737 MAX planes. That was after a door panel blew out on one of the jets shortly after takeoff. Leadership expert Chris Roebuck told us it's another example of Boeing's problematic corporate culture.
You know, something happens at Boeing and you just think, I mean, this has been going on for 6 years now. You just think it can't get any worse. But they managed to come up with something that is worse. The fact that records might have been altered on the process recording of quality for aeroplanes, the 787, is mind-blowingly worrying. Now, Boeing say, OK, we've checked all the ones on the production line. Yeah, but what about the ones that have left the production line and are out there? It's just so many leadership and culture failures over the last 6 years have created so many really, really stunning safety problems.
Chris Roebuck there. Now here, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who is hoping to take over as Finance Minister in this year's general election, has accused the government of gaslighting the British people over the state of the economy. In a speech to business leaders, she said that the government's claims that their economic plan is working are deluded.
They say we've turned a corner, but try telling that to the 6.4 million households across England and Wales last year who saw their rent increase or who had to remortgage. Or the 950,000 families whose mortgage deal is due to expire between now and January next year. They say the plan is working. Is this the same plan that has meant that this is forecast to be the first Parliament on record with living standards at the end lower than they were at the start?
Some other business stories we're following for you this hour, and the Swiss banking giant UBS has made its first quarterly profit since it rescued struggling Credit Suisse last year. It made $1.8 billion between January and March. That follows 2 quarters of steep losses. Nintendo has posted record profits thanks to the weak yen, but it warns that earnings will slump nearly 40% this year. The video games giant says it will reveal a successor to the hit Nintendo Switch console later this year. First-time buyers and homeowners looking to remortgage in the UK are still facing a significant challenge, according to the lender Halifax. Mortgage rates have been on the rise again on expectations the Bank of England will make fewer interest rate cuts this year. Halifax says the average UK house price was up just 0.1% in April, with a typical home now valued at just under £289,000. Now, when Britain left the European Union, the government said that food and drink exporters had a golden opportunity to put British food at the top of the global menu. But the reality is that UK food is still lagging behind its European counterparts, both in terms of sales and reputation. So we sent our business reporter Nick Marsh to Asia's leading food and drinks trade show in Singapore to find out why.
Hungry? Well, you're in the right place. I'm in one of Asia's food meccas. But on display is a who's who of European cuisine. And they're ready to battle it out, bite for bite.
As incomes start to rise, as tastes broaden and travel becomes more common, it's an opportunity for governments not only to sell their products, but also to promote an ideal image of their country.
Do you think of anything in particular when you think of food from Britain?
Sausage, I don't know.
Quite boring, actually. Not so special.
But these cheese exporters are here to fly the flag for British gastronomy.
It's a massive job educating people because, you know, the French and the Swiss and the Italians have been doing it a lot longer than we have. And Parmesan's been around forever. So we've come in sort of fairly late. So we're having to get that message across.
And this is what they're up against.
Anyone want tiramisu?
For Italy, selling food to Asia isn't just vital for its economy, it's basically a form of diplomacy.
They're foodies, they love their food, they love their tradition. It's something we have in common, and that it's, makes easier to spread also the Italian culinary tradition around the world.
I'll have a try on that there, thank you.
After Brexit, UK exporters were promised new markets.
Almost dropped it there. That is very good. You did say it was good. This is grass-fed 100% British beef. And these are the people that British producers are betting on. They want them to know, firstly, that this meat exists, and they're hoping, secondly, that they'll like it, and eventually, above all, that they're going to buy it.
The reality is that exports to Asia only represent a fraction of what Britain sells to the European Union. The UK government told the BBC that it has hosted events at trade shows in the region to try and drive demand for British food. But the suppliers, well, they don't receive any grants to attend these events in the first place. Unlike other countries, they had to pay out of their own pocket just to be here.
Which makes it very difficult to, stand out against the other European groups or other world groups that, are almost fully funded by government.
This is your VR cheese experience.
Absolutely. Would you like to try?
To keep up, British producers are having to get creative to spread the word, which I enjoyed firsthand.
I'm just cleaning the udder of a cow. Okay, I'm grating the cheese onto the noodles.
But building a reputation doesn't come overnight. Many are still finding their way. Nick Marsh, BBC News, Singapore.
That is your business today. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Let's return now to the Middle East, where aid agencies say the closing of the two main crossings into southern Gaza makes it virtually impossible to assist civilians there. The United Nations says Israel isn't allowing humanitarian workers access to the Rafah crossing after taking control of the Gaza side of the border with Egypt. We can talk now to Dr. Nick Maynard, senior surgeon at Oxford University Hospital, who was one of the last